The state owes them protection, which is the very reason that we have states. Forgive me for being a lawyer just for a moment, but in the famous trial after the Second World War of Lord Haw, the legal argument turned on this principle that a person who gets the protection of the state by holding the passport owes them a duty of loyalty. Treason and the state's obligation to protect are opposite sides of the same coin. What Julia Gillard did was the converse of treason. She betrayed an Australian citizen, and of course it's not the first time we've done it, because it was done to David Hicks, it was done to Mamadou Habib. But then let's think for a moment. How many of the people in this hall turned out in numbers like this to support David Hicks for the first 5 years of his detention? I suspect many of you did, but I suspect also that many did not. And across the community, let us not forget, for the first 5 years of David Hicks' incarceration, the public at large were unconcerned, even though we knew what was going on, even though we knew that he was being tortured in Guantanamo. Did you ever see a rally in support of Mamadou Habib while he was being held by the Americans in Guantanamo Bay? The answer is no. Let's not be too bold when we criticise the present government for betraying Julian Assange. Let's not forget that we also, as a people, betrayed Hicks and Habib. And governments learn from that. They know that they will get away with it if we let them get away with it. That's why it's so encouraging to see the response to the treatment of Julian Assange. Perhaps we have learned something from what happened to David and to Mamadou. It's an interesting thing about the book. It'd be fascinating if they do try and recover the proceeds, the proceeds from the book as proceeds of crime. I'm thinking it mightn't be a bad idea to counterclaim for damages for the way the government betrayed him and allowed him to suffer. And what about Sweden? Well, Sweden had this on-again, off-again investigation, all very peculiar. They didn't charge him. When he asked permission to leave the country, they said, yes, you can go. But then, when the Americans had a hissy fit, the Swedes suddenly jumped into action and decided to try and extradite him. Only when America was embarrassed did Sweden decide that it was important to try and extradite him in order to question him, to see whether there was an offence disclosed. Now, this issue has actually divided the ranks to some extent, because those who are concerned about sexual crimes will understandably think, well, you know, if Assange is guilty of these things,